Yo. Today I wanted to try my hand at a discussion video and the topic is in the title. Is Monster Hunter Stories 2 better than Pokémon Sword and Shield? I'm going to open with the cliche answer of it is better in some ways and fails in others. So what is important here will be my justification for why I think Monster Hunter Stories 2 is better and worse than Pokémon Sword and Shield. The main driving force for me wanting to tackle this topic is the endgame PvP. But it would be remiss of me not to talk about the game on which the PvP aspect is built upon. So in case you don't want to stay for the entire video, here is a summary. Monster Hunter Stories 2 is the better single player story driven game, but Pokémon Sword and Shield is the better competitive PvP game. So let's start with graphics and art style. Now when it comes to my personal enjoyment of these games, graphics and art direction are a complete tie for me. One isn't noticeably better or worse than the other for me, so my enjoyment of these games wasn't impacted by this. Switch is my main and only console at this point, so resolution hardly bothers me, but Artstyle does go a long way and they both do well on Artstyle to represent their series. Next up, animation. When it comes to animation however, Monster Hunter Stories 2 takes this hands down. I can try and come up with excuses for Pokemon, like they have way more monsters and moves to animate for, which I do believe and agree with, but they also had a lot more years working in this genre with their monsters. While I acknowledge the effort that goes into their work, Monster Hunter Stories 2 went above and beyond compared to Pokemon, and I'll use 2 points to illustrate this. Kinship attacks versus Gigantamax moves. There aren't even that many Gigantamax Pokemon in the game, and their signature moves don't come close to the level of kinship attacks Monster Hunter Stories 2 presented. I personally feel like they could have put a lot more work into these attacks at the very least. That's not to say they don't have some stunning animated attacks in Pokemon though. Eternal Beam from Eternatus comes to mind, but I do think Pokemon could have gone a lot further when it comes to animating attacks. Cutscenes. Now we can maybe still debate the move animations, but I can't think of a defense or can I imagine someone defending the cutscenes in Pokemon, especially not when we are comparing them to Monster Hunter Stories 2. Stories 2 cutscenes and even in-engine story scenes could be ported straight into an anime. We can see the team going above and beyond with this, and when it comes to Pokemon I almost feel like they didn't try. The scene with the covered dog turning always grinds me, even though I will admit that if the internet didn't make a fuss about it, I probably would not have noticed. I made the last point about the internet bringing it to my attention just to say it didn't affect my enjoyment of the game. But when it comes to cutscenes, there is no contest. Stories 2 takes the whole cake. Voice acting.
Is it? Red! I can't believe my eyes!
Enhancing the cutscenes and the story delivery overall is the voice acting, of which Pokemon has none, so there isn't even a competition here. Even if the writing was bad for Stories 2, which it isn't, having voice acting I believe is better than not having it. Even with a silent protagonist, I still was happy to have voice acting. There is nothing to compare here, Stories 2 wins every step of the way. As we are talking about audio, let's go to sound design. I'm not sure to compare this one. I'm no professional reviewer and the sound design didn't stick out in any way through either of the 2 games for me. The only memory I have that is fresh in my mind is the annoying sounds Zinogre makes when he gets knocked down. That should be erased from the world. Other than that, I'll call sound design a tie and leave it to you to pick a winner if you must, or justify one over the other in the comments. But possibly the most important audio in any game is music. And they are tied. Now video game music is something I only truly came to appreciate a few years ago, probably around the time I started gaming on Switch. Now I know iconic music when I hear it, think One Winged Angel, but I never truly appreciated what good music did to the soul, but now I do. To give you an example of my taste, 2 soundtracks I hold in high regard are Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Octopath Traveler soundtracks. Honorable mentions go to Hollow Knight, Dragalia Lost, Smash Ultimate, and Monster Hunter Rise, my first Monster Hunter game. So Stories and Sword and Shield have a few standout songs, but as an overall game they are just good. Music is highly dependent on the listener though, but I do feel some songs get universal appeal. So if you love either of these 2 game soundtracks, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Given all that we have covered, let's now compare the story. For the story each game told, it is a tie. Both were run of the mill for me, never getting too excited at any point. Just a been there, done that type of deal. What is the tiebreaker though is the pacing. Stories 2 pacing and integration with exploration felt like perfection. It never missed a beat to keep me engaged and pushing forward while still giving me the freedom to explore as I please. I can't say enough, but the pacing felt exceptional. With only one part I felt dragged on a bit too long, which is near the end, when you have to track down 4 specific monsters. Sword and Shield's pacing felt disjointed at times. I haven't played the story portion in a while, so I'm going off memory, but it wasn't paced in the same way stories was. I think now I've compared all the basics most reviewers would cover, so now let's get on with the meat and potatoes of this discussion, endgame and PvP. Starting with endgame systems. Let's start with the systems, as I feel both games feel terribly here, or maybe I just lack understanding. My biggest issue with both games is the artificial grind to have monsters PvP ready. Stories has this gene system that is ripped right out of a gacha, but done much more fairly in some respects. My issue with it is the lack of quality of life. For instance, there should be an item that allows me to swap gene positions in the endgame. There is no reason not to provide this other than increasing the grinding time I have to put in if I want to change up a monster. In that same vein, if you are going to add reskins of monsters in the DLC, there should also be an item that lets me transfer over my entire gene board over to the new monster. I built up my Glavenus to PvP standards with fully maxed out genes only for Hellblade Glavenus to come out less than a month later. Now I knew I wasn't going to use Hellblade, so it didn't bother me too much, but knowing it is coming has 2 effects on players. Either they don't build up regular Glavenus because they know a better version is coming, or they don't bother to use Hellblade because the grind to do over most of the gene farming is quite annoying. Now a single use item that lets me transport a full gene board will rectify this in an instant. I could work on regular Glavenus and have him prepped to transfer over to Hellblade when that came out. And items like these only need to be available in the endgame and at a very reasonable price, unlike a la Pokémon. Now Pokémon has realized the need for quality of life items in the endgame, and for the most part they provide most of them and some at a reasonable price, but some of the most important ones are locked behind extra grindy, extra boring content. The head culprit being the ability patch. There are so many Pokemon I opt not to use because I don't want to put in the grind to get one ability patch for a Pokemon I might only use for 1 month and then dump. Or use the patch, realize it doesn't work, and then feel like I wasted all that time grinding. Now I know for Pokemon that Pokémon Shield don't exist, but that isn't an official channel nor is it an actual game, so I can't use it as a defense here, nor does it help with the grind to get items I need to build the team. I have almost 1400 hours in my Pokémon Shield, and I wouldn't be surprised if 1/3 of that is just grinding to make teams. Pokemon has a lot of time wasting systems like breeding, which I don't mind as much as I equate it to gene farming in stories too. Just a little bit of RNG to soup up the game and reward players for putting in work to get a little extra spice, but I draw the line at the quality of life items. I penalize stories too for not having them and Pokemon for making them too expensive, and I always wonder why. Not having them or placing them behind long boring grinds never made sense to me, as all it does is artificially inflate game time for a part of your game the majority of players don't even experience. So why not include quality of life and make it more accessible? I'm positive most casual players don't care about an ability patch for Pokemon, and in stories too, the casual players, even if they do engage with the gene system, probably would have moved on to a new game by the time Hellblade came out, since it is post-story content. In summary, my point is that these artificial grinds are not necessary, as all they do is inflate game time arbitrarily. I believe they should be gated in some way, like only available after you clear the story mode. And there should be some grind involved in getting these quality of life items, but it shouldn't be to the levels of getting an ability patch. I'm guessing here, but I don't think it should take more than 10 minutes tops to get such things. There are 6 monsters on a team in these games. 10 minutes each doesn't sound bad, an hour for a full team. But when it takes an hour plus to get one monster finished, I think that is ridiculous. It hurts experimentation as the cost of failure is too high a time investment. And now to tackle my final point as to why I think Pokemon is the better PvP game compared to Stories 2. PvP. Stories 2 has too much RNG for a PvP game. Now you might enjoy it, and I do to a point, in the PvE at least. But the game is heavily RNG based, and because you can literally put every single ability on every single monster, it doesn't give you much chance to strategize or even build a synergistic team overall. They started simple with a rock, paper, scissors system, but the problem is that it prevails from the core of the battle system right out to the tippy tip edge of the system. All you need to do most of the time is win 2 to 3 head-to-heads in a row and you won the game, since if you have taken a heart and you can use your kinship attack, you have more than likely taken the game, and this goes for either player. And the entire thing is based on rock, paper, scissors. Elements, weakness, and all other factors play a minimum role in the damage that can be dealt and negated completely with a head-to-head. If you were playing early PvP or paying attention to it, you would have known that the meta came down to people trying to get status effects off using throwing knives, and even that has some RNG to it. You can improve your odds, but it was never 100%, so whoever was luckier in getting a status, especially sleep, almost always took a heart automatically. Now we know people have started integrating countermeasures by building negate status into their builds, but then it pushes us back entirely to the rock, paper, scissors issue, in which whoever takes the most head-to-heads wins the match. I also didn't even mention that without enough kinship gauge, or if you want to save it for a kinship attack, the monsters attack on their own, and that in itself is fully RNG, with no way for you to necessarily influence it outside of outright overriding the command. Pokemon, on the other hand, has had years to refine and balance its systems, and it rewards players for knowledge, even if RNG can swing battles from time to time. I'm not going to go into all the details, but I will highlight a few contrasting points. Limiting the overall pool of moves a Pokemon can learn goes a long way in helping you team build and knowing what to expect from an opponent, which helps with strategy, unlike Monster Hunter where every monster can learn every move under the sun. Also in Pokemon, you have full control of every decision you make, and you're not just playing rock, paper, scissors and hoping you made the right call. I think to Monster Hunter Stories 2's detriment, they were limited by the fact that they wanted to remain true to the core series DNA. And while it oozes with this and it brings me so much joy to experience, it doesn't translate well into the PvP environment. I love the fact that the monster does as it pleases unless you have enough kinship to override its action. It gives a nice sense of immersion, but again it doesn't translate well into PvP. I think the best way to fix this, for example, would be to limit speed type monsters to only learning speed type skills. But they would be able to use a power or technical basic attack on their own if they choose to. This leaves some of the RNG, but it gives monsters a more limited scope in which true counterplay could be developed. This change may create a ripple of changes to the battle system, but as it stands now I don't think it is well suited to PvP. It mostly feels tacked on. Not to mention there is no rank ladder or real rewards to consider, so there isn't even much incentive to play the PvP mode in Monster Hunter Stories 2. As for Pokemon, they could definitely use some animation updates to spice up the battles. But for now, I don't have any big complaints about it or changes I would like to see at the moment. Actually, scratch that, I would like to see Ally Switch get nerfed, but that's a different topic. Let's close off with the general multiplayer, since that is part of both games I almost forgot. Multiplayer. PvP isn't the only multiplayer mode these games offer. Stories 2 has multiplayer quests where 2 people can tackle a dungeon, and Pokemon has Dynamax raids. They both suck. There is too much loading and general waiting for move selections, and the general adventuring or lack thereof in Pokemon's case is just a slog. In both games I opt to do these multiplayer built quests solo once the option is there. And in this regard, Stories 2 scores points over Pokemon in that they make it possible to do the run solo by giving you proper teammates, unlike Pokemon which give you garbage teammates. I'm looking at you, Martin, and your stinking soul rot. I hope Capcom continues with the story spin-offs of Monster Hunter, and I would like to see them improve the PvP aspect of it if they choose to keep it in, as I do feel this is the closest a monster collecting game has come to competing with Pokemon on all fronts. Closing. If you have listened all the way to the end of this, I thank you from my heart, and if you skipped to this point hoping to have an overall summary and didn't catch it at the beginning, Monster Hunter Stories 2 is the better single player story driven game, but Pokémon Sword and Shield is the better competitive PvP game. The best thing about YouTube is the ability to share in the comments your own thoughts and opinions. So feel free to share, and as I am still an extremely small channel, I can respond to every comment, so I'll be there interacting. Also, if you just listen to the entire thing but don't have anything to share, leaving Martin's soul rot in the comments will still let me know you listen and enjoy the entire discussion. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Dum dum dum.